The exploration vessel Aurora drifted through the empty darkness of space, its silver hull reflecting the distant light of unknown stars. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the view screen display a sector of space no human had ever seen before. 3 years had passed since they left Earth's solar system. 3 years of mapping stars and planets that existed only as numbers in their computer databases. "Captain, we're picking up something on long-range sensors," said Katie Brooks from her station at the navigation console. She was young, barely 24, but she had sharp eyes and sharper instincts. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as she tried to make sense of the readings. Jake walked over to her station and leaned down to look at her screen. "What kind of something?" "Big, really big. Multiple contacts, sir. At least 20 vessels, maybe more. They're not moving, just sitting there in formation." Katie's voice carried a hint of nervousness that she tried to hide. Jake felt his stomach tighten. In 3 years of exploration, they had found ancient ruins, strange plants on distant worlds, and even some basic microorganisms. But they had never encountered another spacefaring civilization. Until now. "Sound general quarters. Get everyone to their stations. And somebody wake up Ben Carter. I want our best tactical officer on deck right now." Jake moved back to his command chair and sat down, his mind already running through a dozen different scenarios. The bridge came alive with activity. Crew members rushed to their posts. Lights shifted from the soft white of normal operations to the harsh red of combat readiness. Within 5 minutes, Lieutenant Ben Carter stumbled onto the bridge, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "Sorry, Captain. I was in the middle of my sleep cycle," Ben said as he dropped into his seat at the tactical station. "Don't worry about it. What can you tell me about those ships?" Ben's fingers flew over his controls, pulling up data and running analysis programs. His face went pale as the results came back. "Sir, those ships are massive. The smallest one is 3 times the size of the Aurora, and their weapon signatures are off the charts. If they're hostile, we don't stand a chance in a direct fight." Jake nodded slowly. He had expected as much. The Aurora was an exploration vessel, not a warship. They had defensive systems and a few weapons, but nothing that could stand up to a full military fleet. "Can we go around them?" Jake asked. Katie shook her head. "Not without adding 6 weeks to our journey. And sir, we don't have 6 weeks of supplies left. We need to resupply at the station in the Kepler system, and the fastest route goes right through their position." "Options?" Jake looked around at his senior staff. Ben spoke first. "We could try to sneak past them. If we power down to minimal systems and drift through on momentum, we might not show up on their sensors. And if that doesn't work?" Jake asked. "Then we try to talk to them. Maybe they're friendly," offered Lisa Ward, the chief engineer. She had joined them on the bridge, her hands covered in grease from whatever repair work she had been doing in the engine room. Jake considered both options. Sneaking felt like the safer choice, but if these aliens did detect them, it would look suspicious. On the other hand, announcing their presence could be seen as a threat. He looked at each of his officers in turn, reading their faces, weighing their unspoken thoughts. "Katie, what do you think?" he asked suddenly. The young navigator looked surprised. "Me, sir?" "Yes, you. You found them. What's your gut telling you?" Katie bit her lip, thinking, "I think we should announce ourselves. If we try to hide and they catch us, we look like we're up to no good. But if we come in openly, broadcasting peaceful intentions, at least we're being honest." "Ben, you disagree." "I can see it on your face," Jake said. Ben nodded. "With respect, sir, honesty doesn't mean much if we're dead. We don't know these aliens. We don't know how they think or what they value. Caution seems smarter. Lisa?" Jake turned to the engineer. "I'm with Katie on this one. We came out here to meet new civilizations, not hide from them. Yeah, it's risky, but everything we do out here is risky." Jake sat back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. 3 different opinions from 3 people he trusted. This was why he valued his crew. They weren't afraid to disagree with him or each other. They thought independently and spoke their minds. "All right, we go in openly. Katie, set a course that takes us past their position at a safe distance. Ben, prepare a first contact package. All our languages, mathematics, basic information about humanity. And make sure our weapons are powered down. I want them to see we're not a threat." "Sir, powering down weapons leaves us defenseless," Ben protested. "I know, but it also sends a clear message. Do it." "Yes, sir." Ben didn't look happy, but he followed the order. The Aurora changed course, moving slowly toward the alien fleet. As they got closer, the view screen resolved the individual ships. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, all curves and angles that seemed impossible, made from materials that shifted colors in the starlight. "Transmitting first contact package now," Ben announced. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. The alien ships remained motionless. The crew of the Aurora waited, tension thick in the air. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Then everything happened at once. The alien ships came alive, their engines flaring with light. They moved with frightening speed, surrounding the Aurora in a perfect sphere formation. The view screen lit up with incoming transmissions, dozens of them, all in languages the computer couldn't translate. "They're hailing us," Katie said, her voice shaking slightly. "Can we respond?" "Working on it. The computer is trying to find common ground in the mathematical sequences." 3 more minutes passed. Then the computer chimed with success. "We have basic translation capability, sir. Very basic. We can understand maybe 1 word in 5. Put them through." The view screen changed. A figure appeared and several crew members gasped. The alien was tall, easily 7 feet, with skin that looked like it was made of purple crystal. 6 arms extended from its torso, and its face had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. When it spoke, the voice was deep and resonant. The computer struggled to translate. "You are small ones. Who are you? Why are you in our space?" Jake stood up and faced the screen. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel Aurora. We come in peace. We were passing through this region and detected your ships. We mean no harm." The alien's 4 eyes seemed to study him with intense focus. Then it spoke again, and this time the computer did better with the translation. "I am Queen Jatara of the Vakreen Empire. This space belongs to us. All who enter must submit to our authority. You will prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your destruction." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Not a friendly first contact, then." "We are a peaceful expedition," he said carefully. "We will cooperate, but we cannot submit to anyone's authority. We are free people representing a free civilization." The Queen tilted her head in a gesture that might have meant confusion. "Free? There is no such thing. There are only rulers and those who serve them. You will learn this truth." The transmission cut off. On the tactical display, one of the alien ships broke formation and moved toward the Aurora. "They're coming alongside," Ben reported. "And sir, they're definitely armed. I'm reading weapons that could cut through our hull like paper." Jake sat back down and looked at his crew. Every face showed fear, but also determination. They were far from home, facing an overwhelming force, but they weren't giving up. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to be boarded by an alien force. Do not resist. Do not provoke them. But also, do not bow to them. We represent humanity, and we represent it with dignity. Show them who we are. Morrison out." He closed the ship-wide channel and looked at Katie, Ben, and Lisa. "Whatever happens next, remember that we're in this together. Nobody faces this alone." "Yes, sir," they said in unison. Through the view screen, Jake watched as the alien ship extended a boarding tube toward the Aurora's airlock. Within minutes, he would meet Queen Jatara face to face. He took a deep breath and stood up, straightening his uniform. "Let's go meet our guests," he said, and headed for the airlock with his senior staff behind him. Queen Jatara walked through the corridors of the Aurora with her 6 guards flanking her on all sides. The human ship was tiny compared to her own vessels, cramped and filled with strange machinery. But what disturbed her most was not the ship itself. It was the behavior of its crew. She had been aboard for 3 days now, watching everything. Her guards had taken up positions throughout the vessel, observing and reporting back to her. What they described made no sense according to everything she knew about how civilizations functioned. The Queen stood in the doorway of what the humans called the engine room. Inside, she could see Captain Morrison talking with Lieutenant Ben Carter. She activated the translation device implanted in her skull and listened. "Captain, I need to talk to you about the power routing you ordered yesterday," Ben said. He looked nervous, but he didn't back down. "I think there's a better way to do it." Jatara tensed, expecting Morrison to strike the lieutenant for questioning his orders. In her empire, such insubordination would result in immediate punishment. But Morrison simply nodded and said, "Show me what you're thinking." Ben pulled up a display on one of the screens. "If we route the power through conduit 7 instead of conduit 5, we reduce the strain on the primary systems by 18%. It's a longer path, but it's safer." Morrison studied the display for a long moment. Then he tapped his communication badge. Morrison to Lisa Ward. Can you come to the engine room for a minute? I need your expertise on something. Within seconds, the chief engineer arrived, wiping her hands on a rag. Morrison explained Ben's suggestion, and Lisa examined the display carefully. Ben's right, she said after a moment. Conduit 7 can handle the load better. I should have thought of this myself. Morrison smiled. Then we'll do it Ben's way. Good catch, Lieutenant. Make the changes. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, Ben said, looking relieved. As the three humans went about their work, Queen Jatara felt something she rarely experienced: confusion. Morrison had not punished Ben for questioning him. He had not even seemed angry. Instead, he had asked for more information and changed his decision based on what his subordinate told him. The Queen approached Morrison after Lisa and Ben had left. Why did you not punish that male? She asked directly. Morrison turned to face her, showing no fear despite being half her size. Punish him? For what? He questioned your order. In my empire, such behavior results in death. Morrison looked genuinely shocked. Ben was doing his job. A good officer tells me when he sees a problem. I'd be a fool not to listen. That's how we stay alive out here. But you are the captain. Your word should be absolute. My word carries weight because my crew trusts me, but I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. If I punished people for pointing out my mistakes, I'd just make more of them. Morrison paused, studying her face. How does your empire function if no one can question the Queen? They obey because they must. It is written in our very biology. The Queen commands, and all others serve. This is the natural order. Natural for you, maybe. Not for us. The Queen left the engine room, her mind churning with troubling thoughts. She returned to the quarters Morrison had provided for her, a small room near the bridge. Her guards stood outside, waiting for orders. Over the next few days, Jatara observed more incidents that contradicted everything she understood about hierarchy and power. She watched Morrison eat meals in the common area with crew members of all ranks. They laughed together. They made jokes, some of them at Morrison's expense, and he laughed the hardest of all. One evening, she saw pilot Danny Torres teaching navigation to 3 junior officers. He explained complex maneuvers with patience, answering every question thoroughly. In her empire, knowledge was power, and power was hoarded. No one shared skills freely because doing so might allow someone else to rise and threaten their position. Why do you teach them? Jatara asked Danny after the session ended. The pilot looked up at her with friendly eyes, showing none of the fear her presence usually inspired in conquered species. Because they want to learn, and I know how to do it. Plus, if something happens to me, they need to be able to fly the ship. You create your own replacements? That seems foolish. Danny laughed. I don't think of them as replacements. I think of them as backup. We're all on the same team. The better everyone is at their job, the safer we all are. The Queen retreated to process this information. In her empire, creating your own replacement was indeed foolish. It made you expendable. But these humans seemed to think differently. They acted as if the group's success mattered more than individual power. The most disturbing incident happened during a staff meeting on the 5th day of her observation. Jatara had been invited to attend, though Morrison made it clear she was an observer only. The senior staff gathered around a table in the briefing room. Morrison, Ben, Lisa, Katie, and several others she had come to recognize. Morrison stood at the head of the table. All right, people, we have a problem. I miscalculated the fuel requirements for our next jump. We're going to come up short by about 7%. The Queen waited for the others to react with fear or anger. Instead, they simply started problem solving. Can we reduce our speed and do a longer, more fuel-efficient burn? Asked Katie. That might work, but it adds 3 days to our journey, Lisa said. Do we have 3 days of life support? Barely, said Ben. We'd need to reduce consumption across the board. They continued discussing options, and then Science Officer Nicole Hayes spoke up. Captain, I appreciate that you told us about the miscalculation right away. A lot of commanders would have tried to hide it or blame someone else. Your honesty makes it easier for us to fix the problem. Morrison looked slightly embarrassed. It was my mistake. You all deserve to know. Jatara could not contain herself any longer. She stood up, her full height making everyone in the room look small. This makes no sense. You admit failure in front of your subordinates, and instead of losing their respect, you gain it. How is this possible? Morrison gestured for her to sit, and surprisingly she did. In human culture, admitting mistakes is a sign of strength, not weakness. It shows confidence, and more importantly, it builds trust. My crew knows I won't lie to them or hide problems. That means when I tell them something, they believe me. But you could lose your position, the Queen insisted. If they see you as fallible, why would they follow you? They follow me because they trust me, not because they fear me. Trust is earned by being honest, by making good decisions most of the time, and by caring about their well-being. When I do make mistakes, fixing them quickly matters more than pretending I'm perfect. Ben added, None of us are perfect, Your Majesty, not even the captain. But we work well together because we can admit our limitations and cover for each other's weaknesses. That's what makes us strong. Jatara sat in silence as the meeting continued. The humans resolved their fuel problem by combining several suggestions from different crew members. No single person had the complete answer, but together, they found a solution, and Morrison praised each person who contributed, sharing the credit freely. That night, Jatara could not rest. She stood in her quarters, replaying everything she had witnessed. Her empire had conquered 47 star systems. Her fleets were feared across multiple sectors of space. But watching these humans work together made her question the foundation of everything she had built. In her empire, she ruled through fear and biological compulsion. Her subjects obeyed because they had no choice. The neural pathways of every Vakreen were shaped from birth to serve the hierarchy. The Queen commanded, the nobles enforced, the workers labored, and the soldiers fought. Each knew their place, and deviation meant death. But these humans had no such compulsion. They followed Morrison by choice. And that choice made them more united, more dedicated than any of her subjects had ever been. The Queen called for her chief guard, a massive warrior named Krell. He entered her quarters and bowed deeply as protocol demanded. Krell, answer me honestly. If you could choose to leave my service, would you? The guard's face showed surprise and fear. My Queen, I serve because it is my purpose. I was bred for this role. That is not what I asked. If you could choose, would you stay or go? Krell trembled, clearly torn between honesty and self-preservation. Finally, he spoke in a whisper. I do not know, my Queen. I have never considered such a question. Choice is not something I understand. Jatara dismissed him and returned to the window, looking out at the stars. For the first time in her long life, she felt something that her species had no word for. Later, she would learn the human term for it. Doubt. The next morning, she approached Morrison on the bridge. I wish to understand more about your system of command. Will you explain it to me? Morrison looked surprised but pleased. Of course. What do you want to know? Everything, the Queen said. The alarm cut through the quiet of the Aurora's night cycle like a knife. Jake Morrison jerked awake in his quarters, already moving toward his uniform before his mind fully processed what was happening. Years of training had made the response automatic. He reached the bridge in under 2 minutes. Katie Brooks was already at her station, her fingers flying over the controls. Her face was pale in the red emergency lighting. Report, Jake said as he dropped into his command chair. Distress signal, Captain. It's coming from a moon in the nearby system. Multiple signals, actually. Hundreds of them. Katie's voice was tight with stress. Can you translate them? The computer recognizes the language. They're Vakreen signals, sir. The same species as Queen Jatara. Jake felt his stomach drop. He tapped his communication badge. Morrison to Queen Jatara. We're receiving distress signals from your people. Please come to the bridge immediately. The Queen arrived within minutes, moving with surprising speed for her size, her 4 eyes fixed on the main view screen, where the computer had translated and displayed the messages. Under attack. Need help, they're destroying everything. Please, someone help us. The messages repeated over and over, growing more desperate with each transmission. Where? Jatara demanded. Katie brought up a star chart. There's a mining colony on the third moon of the gas giant in this system. According to our sensors, there are 3 large ships in orbit bombarding the surface. Show me, the Queen said. The view screen changed to show a real-time image of the moon. Even from this distance, they could see explosions dotting the surface. 3 massive ships hung in orbit, their weapons firing continuously at the settlements below. Kraith, Jatara said, and her voice carried pure hatred. They are our ancient enemies. They rule through brutality that makes even my empire seem gentle by comparison. If they're attacking that colony, they will kill every living thing they find. How many people are down there? Jake asked. The Queen checked her own device, accessing information from her fleet. 3,000 workers and their families. Civilians, not soldiers. Jake stood up and began issuing orders. Katie, plot an intercept course. Ben, get to tactical and run combat scenarios. Lisa, I need every bit of speed and power you can give me. We're going in, Captain, Jatara said sharply. This is not your concern. These are my people. I will summon my fleet to deal with this situation. How long until your fleet gets here? The Queen hesitated. 6 hours at best speed. Those people don't have 6 hours. Look at the rate of bombardment. The colony will be destroyed in 2 hours, maybe less. Jake moved closer to Jatara, meeting her eyes without flinching. We can help them now. Your ship is small. Those Kraith vessels will destroy you easily. Maybe. But we have to try. Jatara stared at him, her 4 eyes searching his face. Why? You owe my people nothing. I threatened you, invaded your ship, treated you with contempt. Why would you risk your lives for Vakreen you have never met? Because they're people in danger and we can help. That's enough. The Queen shook her head slowly. I do not understand your species. Jake turned back to his crew. Listen up, everyone. I'm not going to order anyone to do this. Those Kraith ships are dangerous and our odds aren't good, so I'm asking for volunteers. Anyone who wants to stay behind, no judgment, no consequences. But if you're willing to help save those people, let me know now. For a moment, silence filled the bridge. Then Katie raised her hand. I'm in, Captain. Me too, said Ben, who had just arrived at tactical. One by one, every crew member on the bridge raised their hand. Jake felt pride swell in his chest. All hands, this is the captain. We're going into a combat situation to rescue Vakreen civilians under attack by Kraith forces. This is voluntary. Anyone who wants to sit this one out, get to the escape pods now. Everyone else, battle stations. He waited, but no one left their posts. Throughout the ship, not a single crew member moved toward the escape pods. Jatara watched this happen with an expression Jake couldn't read. Your people choose to die for strangers. We choose to try to save lives. There's a difference. The Aurora accelerated toward the moon, pushing its engines to maximum. In engineering, Lisa and her team worked frantically to squeeze every bit of performance from the aging systems. The ship shuddered and groaned but held together. 15 minutes to weapons range, Ben announced. What's our plan, Captain? Katie asked. Jake studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. 3 Kraith ships against 1 small human vessel. The math was not in their favor. We can't beat them in a straight fight, he said, so we won't fight them straight. Katie, I want an erratic approach, maximum evasion. Ben, focus all our weapons on their sensor arrays. If we can blind them, we might have a chance. Lisa, how are our shields? At 80% and holding, but they won't last long under sustained fire. Lisa's voice came through the intercom. They only need to last long enough. Everyone, listen. Our goal is not to destroy those ships. Our goal is to buy time for those people to evacuate. If we can keep the Kraith busy for even 30 minutes, it might make the difference. Understood. Captain, came the responses from multiple stations. As they closed in on the moon, the Kraith ships detected them. The bombardment stopped as all 3 vessels turned to face the Aurora. They were massive, bristling with weapons, covered in armor plating that looked like it could shrug off anything the small human ship could throw at it. Here they come, Ben said, his voice steady despite the fear Jake could see on his face. The Kraith opened fire. Brilliant beams of energy lanced through space, and Katie threw the Aurora into a wild corkscrew pattern. Most of the shots missed, but 2 struck the shields, and the whole ship rang like a bell. Shields at 60%, Lisa reported. Return fire, Jake ordered. The Aurora's weapons, tiny compared to the Kraith arsenal, struck out at the nearest enemy ship. Ben had aimed well. The shots hammered into the sensor array on the forward hull, and sparks exploded across the Kreith vessel's surface. "Their forward sensors are damaged," Ben said with grim satisfaction. "They're having trouble tracking us," but the other two ships had no such problems. They maneuvered to flank the Aurora, catching them in a crossfire. Katie did her best, throwing the ship through impossible maneuvers, but it wasn't enough. Energy beams slammed into the shields again and again. "Shields at 20%, Lisa called out. "We can't take much more of this." Jake gripped his armrests, his mind racing. They needed a new approach, something unexpected. Then he saw it on the tactical display. The gas giant had rings, massive fields of ice and rock that could provide cover. "Katie, take us into the rings. Use the debris as cover." "That's dangerous, sir. We could hit something at these speeds. Less dangerous than staying out here in the open." "Do it." Katie didn't argue. She sent the Aurora diving toward the rings, and the Kreith ships followed. Inside the rings, visibility dropped as chunks of ice the size of buildings surrounded them on all sides. Katie's hands moved like lightning, dodging obstacles that appeared out of nowhere. The Kreith ships struggled to follow. They were larger, less maneuverable. One of them clipped a massive ice boulder and spun off course, temporarily out of the fight. "Now's our chance," Jake said. "Ben, launch everything we have at that damaged ship. Lisa, divert all power to weapons. Shields down." "Sir, if we drop shields, one good hit will kill us," Lisa protested. "I know. Do it anyway." The Aurora's weapons blazed to life with unprecedented power. Every missile, every energy weapon, every piece of ordnance they carried launched at once. The barrage struck the Kreith ship's damaged section, and this time the armor cracked. Explosions rippled across the hull, but the other Kreith ship had lined up a shot. Without shields, the Aurora was helpless. Jake saw it coming and knew there was nothing he could do. Then Paul Green's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Captain, I can fix the shield generator, but I have to access it from outside the ship. The conduit is damaged." "Paul, no. That's a death sentence, and it's the only way, sir. I'm already suited up." Before Jake could respond, Paul had opened the emergency airlock and pulled himself out onto the hull. Through the external cameras, Jake watched the young technician crawl across the ship's surface, exposed to vacuum and radiation. The Kreith fired. Paul reached the generator housing and tore it open with his gloved hands. He plunged his arms into the machinery as the energy beam raced toward the Aurora. The shields flickered to life at the last possible second. The Kreith weapon struck the barrier and dissipated harmlessly. But the surge of power from the emergency repair overloaded the system. Paul's suit registered critical damage. "Paul, get back inside," Jake shouted. "Can't, sir. The coupling's fused. If I let go, the shields drop again." Paul's voice was calm, almost peaceful. "It's okay, Captain. This was my choice. I'm buying you the time you need. Use it well." The Kreith ship fired again and again, each shot draining more power, killing Paul by inches as he held the shield generator together with his bare hands. But he didn't let go. "All power to engines," Jake said, his voice breaking. "Get us to that colony. Now." The Aurora shot forward using the precious seconds Paul had bought them. They broke free of the rings and dove toward the moon's surface. Behind them, the Kreith ship struggled to pursue. "We're in landing range." The Aurora limped through space on emergency power, its hull scarred with burn marks and its systems running on the edge of failure. 3,000 Vakrine refugees filled every corridor and cargo bay, grateful to be alive but uncertain about their future. The crew moved among them, distributing food and water, offering comfort where they could. Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Paul Green reaching into that machinery, holding it together even as it killed him. The young technician had been 26 years old. He'd joined the Aurora's crew fresh out of the academy, eager and bright and full of dreams. Now he was gone. "Captain," a voice said behind him. Jake turned to see Queen Jatara standing in the doorway. Her crystalline skin seemed dimmer somehow, less brilliant than when she'd first come aboard. She moved slowly as if carrying a great weight. "Your Majesty," Jake said, his voice flat. "May I speak with you?" Jake gestured to the empty space beside him at the window. Jatara approached and stood there, looking out at the same stars. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, the Queen broke the silence. "I have been thinking about what happened. About your crewmen who died. About all of you who risked everything for people you did not know. We did what we had to do." "No," Jatara said firmly. "You did what you chose to do. That is different. Jake looked at her, seeing something in her 4 eyes that hadn't been there before. Uncertainty, maybe. Or pain. I need to ask you something, the Queen continued. The question that has been consuming me since I came aboard your vessel. Why do they obey you? They don't obey me. I have seen them follow your orders. I have watched them execute your commands without hesitation. How is that not obedience? Jake turned back to the window, gathering his thoughts. This conversation felt important in a way he couldn't quite name. Come with me, he said. I want to show you something. He led Jatara through the damaged corridors, past exhausted crew members who nodded or saluted as they passed. They reached a section of the ship near the main cargo bay. On the wall was a metal plaque polished to a mirror shine. Names were etched into it, dozens of them. This is our memorial wall, Jake explained. Every person listed here died serving on the Aurora. Equipment failures, accidents, diseases we couldn't cure. And now Paul Green joins them. Jatara studied the names, her expression solemn. You honor your dead. We remember them. There's a difference. Jake touched one of the names gently. Commander Helen Price. She was the previous captain of this ship. She took command when the captain before her, William Scott, became ill. His judgment was compromised and he was making dangerous decisions. Helen relieved him of duty to save the crew. She committed mutiny? No, she followed the rules we all agreed to. When a captain is unfit for command, the senior officers have not just the right but the duty to remove them. It's in our regulations. William understood this. Once he recovered, he thanked Helen for having the courage to do what was necessary. Jatara tilted her head. A gesture Jake had learned meant confusion. In my empire, such an action would be treason. The ruler is absolute. The ruler is fallible, Jake corrected. I'm fallible. Every person on this ship is fallible. We make mistakes. We get tired, we get scared, we make bad calls. So we create systems to check each other, to catch mistakes before they become disasters. But who checks the system? We all do. That's the point. My authority as captain comes from the crew's trust. I earn that trust by making good decisions, by listening to advice, by admitting when I'm wrong. If I abuse that trust, I lose it. And without trust, I have no authority. Jake moved down the wall, pointing to another name. Danny Torres taught navigation before he died in an engine malfunction. He could have kept his knowledge to himself, made himself indispensable. But he trained 3 other pilots to be as good as he was. When he died, the ship didn't lose its ability to navigate because he'd shared everything he knew. That seems inefficient, Jatara said. If everyone can do everything, what makes anyone special? It's not about being special. It's about the team surviving. In my culture, we have a saying, no one is irreplaceable, but everyone matters. It means the group is more important than any individual, but every individual contributes to the group. The Queen was silent for a long time, processing this. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than Jake had ever heard it. You asked me earlier how my empire functions if no one can question the Queen. I should explain. My species was genetically engineered millions of years ago by a race that no longer exists. They created us to be the perfect hierarchical society. Our biology compels obedience. A Vakreen noble literally cannot disobey their queen. The neural pathways won't allow it, and lower caste Vakreen cannot disobey the nobles. That's horrifying, Jake said without thinking. Then he added, I'm sorry. That was rude. No, it was honest. And perhaps you are right to find it horrifying. Jatara touched her own chest. I was born to rule. I have never known anything else. I have conquered worlds, commanded fleets, held the power of life and death over billions. But watching your crew these past days, I have felt something I did not expect. What's that? Envy. Jake looked at her in surprise. The Queen continued, My subjects obey me because they must. There is no choice involved, no trust required. I tell them to march into fire and they march. I order them to die and they die. I thought this made me powerful. But your crewman Paul chose to die. He made that decision freely, knowing the cost. And that choice gave his death a meaning that 1,000 compelled sacrifices could never match. Paul believed in what we were doing, Jake said quietly. He believed those people deserved to be saved. And he trusted that his sacrifice would matter, that we would succeed because he gave us the chance. That is what I envy, not your technology or your tactics, but that trust. My people fear me, your people trust you, and I am beginning to understand which is more powerful. Jake considered his next words carefully. Your Majesty, can I ask you something? If your biology compels obedience, how are you able to question your own system? How are you having this conversation with me? Chitara's 4 eyes focused on him with an intensity that was almost painful. That is an excellent question. One I have been asking myself. The truth is, I do not know. Perhaps queens are different. Perhaps the genetic programming is less absolute at the highest level, to allow for strategic thinking. Or perhaps something about exposure to your species has awakened parts of my mind that were dormant. I find myself thinking thoughts that should be impossible. Like what? Like wondering what my empire would look like if my subjects could choose to serve rather than being forced to serve. Like imagining a Vacrine society built on trust instead of compulsion. Like questioning whether conquest and domination are truly the only paths to greatness. She turned away from the memorial wall, her posture suggesting exhaustion. But these are dangerous thoughts. If I act on them, I could destroy everything my people have built over millennia. The stability of the empire depends on absolute hierarchy. Remove that and civilization might collapse into chaos. Jake nodded slowly. That's a real concern. Change is dangerous. But so is staying the same when the system is broken. Is my system broken? I can't answer that. Only you can. But I'll tell you what I know about human history. We've tried many different systems of government. Monarchies, dictatorships, democracies, republics. Some worked better than others. But the systems that lasted longest, that created the most prosperity and happiness, were the ones where people had a voice in how they were governed, where power was distributed and checked, not concentrated in one place. And the systems where power was concentrated, they either collapsed under their own weight or became nightmares for the people living in them. Sometimes both. Chitara looked back at the memorial wall. If I try to change my empire, many will die. The transition would be violent and chaotic. But if I do nothing, my people remain slaves to their own biology, living lives without choice or freedom. What is the right answer? I don't know, Jake admitted. But I do know that recognizing there's a problem is the first step to solving it. And asking the question means you're already changing. The Queen stood silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Tell me about Commander Helen Price, the one who removed the sick captain. What happened to her afterward?" She continued as captain for 2 years, led the Aurora through some of its most successful missions. Then she retired with full honors. She's teaching at the academy now, training the next generation of explorers. She was not punished? Why would she be punished? She did the right thing in a difficult situation. We celebrated her courage. In my empire, she would have been executed for treason even if her actions saved lives. The law's absolute. Then maybe the law needs to change. Chitara looked at him with all 4 eyes. You make it sound simple. It's not simple at all. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. But the alternative is to keep living in a system you know is wrong. The Queen nodded slowly. I must think about this. About all of this. You have given me much to consider, Captain Morrison. As she turned to leave, Jake called out to her. Your Majesty, one more thing. Thank you for allowing us to rescue your people. Queen Chitara stood before her High Council aboard her flagship, the Eternal Throne. The massive chamber gleamed with precious metals and crystals, a monument to the Vacrine Empire's power. 50 of her highest-ranking nobles sat in a perfect circle around her, their positions determined by centuries of tradition and genetic hierarchy. 3 days had passed since she left the Aurora. 3 days of silence while she considered everything she had witnessed. Now her council demanded answers, and she could delay no longer. Admiral Kethazar spoke first, his voice sharp with anger. Your Majesty, the situation is intolerable. You allowed these humans to rescue Vacrine civilians, making our empire appear weak. Worse, you did not immediately destroy their vessel afterward. This shows softness that will be interpreted as weakness throughout the galaxy. Other nobles nodded in agreement. General Voskara added, the humans exposed our fleet to danger. They violated our sovereignty. By all rights and laws, we should have reduced their ship to atoms the moment they appeared. Chitara listened to the chorus of condemnation. A week ago, she would have agreed with every word. But now, having seen what humans were capable of, having witnessed Paul Green sacrifice himself for people he had never met, the old certainties felt hollow. The humans saved 3,000 of our people, she said quietly. That is irrelevant, Kethzar snapped. They did so without permission, without authority. They inserted themselves into Vacrine affairs. This cannot be tolerated. Why not? Shatara asked. The chamber fell silent. The question itself was shocking. A queen did not ask why. A queen declared and others obeyed. Kethazar recovered first. Because it sets a dangerous precedent, Your Majesty. If other species believe they can act independently in our territory, the Empire's authority crumbles. Perhaps our authority deserves to crumble if it values rules over lives. The silence that followed was absolute. Several nobles looked at each other in confusion and fear. This was not how their queen spoke. This was not how any queen had ever spoken. Young Admiral Shentar, one of the officers who had observed the rescue operation, rose from his seat. Your Majesty, I was present when the humans attacked the Kraith ships. I saw their tactics, their coordination. But more than that, I saw their motivation. They fought with a dedication that our soldiers, for all their conditioning, rarely display. It made me wonder what might be possible if our people fought because they wanted to, not because they were compelled to. Sit down, Shentar, General Voskara commanded. You speak treason. No, Shatara said firmly. He speaks his thoughts. And I invited such discussion when I called this council. Let him finish, Shentar continued, emboldened by the Queen's support. I have commanded troops for 15 years. They follow orders perfectly because their biology demands it. But I've never seen them show initiative, creativity, or genuine commitment beyond their programming. The humans displayed all of these qualities. It suggests that voluntary service might be more effective than compelled obedience. Madness, Kethazar declared. You would destroy the foundations of our civilization based on observations of one alien crew? The hierarchy has sustained us for millions of years. It is written in our genes, placed there by the ancients who created us. You cannot simply abandon it because these humans confused you with their strange ways. Shatara moved to the center of the circle, turning slowly so her 4 eyes could meet those of every noble present. I have been thinking about the ancients, the ones who engineered our species, who created the hierarchy, who made us what we are. They are gone now, extinct for 500,000 years. And I wonder if they were so wise, why did they not survive? Perhaps their rigid systems and absolute control made them too inflexible to adapt when circumstances changed. The ancients fell to a plague, Your Majesty, another noble said. Not to failures of government, did they? Or did their inability to question their own systems prevent them from finding a cure? We will never know. Shatara paused, gathering her thoughts. But I do know this. I have seen an alternative to our way, and I cannot unsee it. Kethazar stood, his posture aggressive. Then you are compromised, Your Majesty. You have been infected by human ideas that threaten our way of life. The Council must act to preserve the Empire. You dare threaten me? Shatara's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I dare to speak truth. You are my queen, and my biology compels me to serve you. But if you lead the Empire to destruction, that service becomes meaningless. Perhaps it is time for a new queen, one not contaminated by alien philosophies. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some nobles supported Kethazar, calling for Shatara's removal. Others defended their queen, arguing that no one had the authority to question her decisions. The perfect hierarchy, for the first time in recorded history, showed cracks. Shatara watched it all with a strange feeling of satisfaction. This chaos, this argument, this breakdown of absolute obedience was exactly what she had hoped for. The fact that her nobles could even conceive of questioning her meant something fundamental had already changed. She raised all 6 of her arms and the room fell silent. Enough, I will tell you what I have decided. The Aurora and its crew will be granted safe passage through Vakrine space. They will be declared friends of the Empire and given our protection. Your Majesty, no, several voices protested at once. Furthermore, I am establishing a new position within our government, a council of advisors who will have the freedom to question my decisions and offer alternative perspectives. This council will include representatives from all castes, not just the nobility. This is revolution, Voskara said, his voice filled with horror. This is evolution, Shatara corrected. The Empire will adapt or it will die. I choose adaptation. Kethazar shook his head slowly. You doom us all, my queen. When word spreads that the hierarchy can be questioned, that obedience is optional, chaos will consume every world we control. Perhaps we will discover strengths we never knew we had. The humans showed me something important. A leader who rules through fear can command obedience, but a leader who earns trust can inspire greatness. I want to learn the difference, she turned to Shentar. Admiral, you will lead the first advisory council. Select 20 individuals from various castes who you believe capable of independent thought. Report to me in 1 week with your recommendations. Yes, Your Majesty. Shentar looked both terrified and excited. The rest of you are dismissed. Think carefully about what I have said. Change is coming to the Vakrine Empire. You can resist it and be swept away. Or you can help guide it and perhaps save our civilization from its own rigidity. The nobles filed out, their postures showing confusion, anger, and in a few cases cautious hope. When the chamber was empty except for her personal guards, Jatara allowed herself to feel the weight of what she had done. She had shattered patterns that had existed since before her species had memory. The consequences would be enormous, possibly catastrophic, but she had also opened a door that had been locked for millions of years. The door to choice. Later that day, she sent a communication to the Aurora. Captain Morrison appeared on her screen, looking tired but alert. Your Majesty, he said, I hope your people are settling in well. They are safe, thanks to you. Captain, I wanted you to know that I have granted your ship safe passage through Vakrine space. You are free to go. Morrison smiled. Thank you. That's very generous. It is the least I can do. But I also wanted to tell you something else. I have begun implementing changes in my empire, based on what I observed aboard your vessel. That's wonderful, but also dangerous. Yes, very dangerous. My High Council is in chaos. Half of them think I have gone mad. The other half is uncertain but curious. Admiral Kethazar has all but called for my removal, though he cannot act on it due to his biological programming. What will you do about him? I will do something a Vakrine queen has never done before. I will explain my reasoning to him and ask him to consider it. If he still opposes me after genuine consideration, I will accept his opposition as valid dissent rather than treasonous rebellion. Morrison looked impressed. That takes courage. I learned from watching you. You did not punish your officers for disagreeing with you. You listened to them, even when they questioned your judgment. It made them more loyal, not less. So what happens now? Shatara considered the question. Now I try to build something new. I create spaces where my people can question, can choose, can think for themselves. It will take generations. Many will resist. Some will die in the chaos that follows. But perhaps someday, the Vakrine Empire will become something worthy of the loyalty it commands rather than something that simply compels obedience. I wish you luck. Morrison said sincerely. If you ever need advice or help, we'll be around. I may take you up on that offer. But first I have a question. The one I asked you before. Why do they obey you? Morrison smiled. They don't obey me, Your Majesty. They choose to follow me, and I earn that choice every single day by serving them in return. That's the secret. It's not about power. It's about service. Service, Shatara repeated, tasting the word. In her language, there was no distinction between service and slavery. But she was beginning to understand that in human language, in human thinking,